All right, everybody, get ready, because today we're diving deep into a world of Argentinian history
Mm.
and art and some pretty intense stuff, too, all through this one comic book, The Eternaut.
And not just one version either. We're talking the 57 classic and then that really trippy 1969 remake. They both deal with aliens invading, but totally different vibes.
Oh, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Two for the price of one. We're looking at excerpts from this killer review that compares them both. But before we go full-on geek, could you maybe, set the scene? What's The Eternaut all about at its core?
Okay, so picture this. You're hanging out with your friends in Buenos Aires, right? And then bam, this crazy deadly snowstorm hits.
Yeah, and not the fun kind of snow, either.
No, not at all. This snow is like straight up lethal, and that's how these freaky alien invaders make their grand entrance.
Talk about harshing your mellow. So
Yeah.
this group of friends, are they suddenly fighting for their lives against these, what did you call them, extraterrestrial baddies?
You got it. The Eternaut is about fear, what people do when things get crazy, the choices they make. It's huge EE in Argentina, not just because it's sci-fi, but it's like a snapshot of what people were scared of in different times.
Okay, I am so there. Let's hit that 1957 original. This review, It Can't Shut Up About the Art by Francisco Lopez,
Mm.
super detailed, almost like photographs.
Mhm.
Like the guy wasn't just drawing Buenos Aires getting wrecked. He was actually there.
Yeah, it's wild, isn't it? Lopez's style, it's almost like you're watching a documentary, even though it's like spaceships and aliens. It's bleak, sure, but there's this like little spark of hope. You know how lots of those end of the world stories, it's all about loners? Well, the Eternaut from 57, it's all about people coming together.
So less about every man for himself and more about we're all in this together.
100%. It's finding strength in like community, having a shared purpose when everything's going to hell. And that really meant something back in Argentina then.
Right. The 50s were. Well, let's just say Argentina had seen better days, politically speaking. So this whole idea of everyday folks teaming up against, I don't know, an unbeatable enemy, it must have resonated like crazy with readers.
Super powerful message for sure. Even when things are at their worst, there's still room for, toughness, bravery, finding common ground. But then zoom forward to 69, things get, wow, a lot more intense, man. The art, the story, everything.
Yeah, the review calls the 69 version a total artistic and story overhaul. It talks about Alberto Breccia, the artist. They describe his style as abstract, nightmarish, almost like he's getting inside the characters' heads and showing us how terrified they are.
And that's totally on purpose. It reflects this big change in the story. The 69 Eternaut, it's way more cynical, especially about authority, the government, that whole thing. You get this feeling of paranoia, like the people in charge, they're just trying to save themselves, not the regular folks.
So it's yeah, the aliens are invading, but it's more about the dark side of humans, right? Abuse of power, betrayals, all that nasty stuff.
Yeah. And it's not even subtle. The review mentions how Osterheld, the writer, he really goes for it in the remake. Like, he literally uses captions to call out the powerful people, the exploitation. The 69 version is straight up political.
Whoa, so the comic is like a protest. That's intense.
Totally. And get this, the 69 one, it got cut short because it was too hot to handle.
Yeah.
Kind of ironic when you think about how it's all about censorship and oppression and all.
Man, that's heavy. It's like finally finding your voice, saying what needs to be said, and then bam, someone shuts you down. Really makes you think about how fragile freedom can be, huh? Especially for artists trying to challenge the system.
It's true, though, some stories, the ones that, rattle the cage, those are the ones that get squashed. But that makes them even more powerful.
Totally. Okay, so we got these two Eternauts, same story, different vibes. One is hopeful, the other is darker. But they both use this alien invasion to ask big questions about humanity, right?
Exactly. And that's barely scratching the surface. What's really wild is how both these versions show what people were afraid of back then, but it still feels relevant today. You know what I mean?
Right.
This review we're looking at, it makes this crazy point about how the Eternaut, both versions, they're like reflections of what freaks us out. Even now, global stuff, society going bonkers, all that.
Oh, totally. Yeah, they came from specific times, the Cold War, all that jazz. But the stuff they're worried about is universal, right?
Exactly. I mean, back then it was nukes, then social unrest. The thing is, the Eternaut makes you think about the ugly truth about us, about the world. What happens when everything you thought was safe, it's gone? How do you deal with that? What are you willing to fight for when, nothing's left? Pretty intense.
Dude, haven't we all felt that lately? Pandemic, politics, the planet heating up. It's these fears are built into being human. They just look different at different times,
Yeah.
right?
Whoa. That's deep. Are we like stuck in this loop of fear? Or can we learn from, I don't know, stories like the Eternaut? I mean, both versions, they're about fighting that urge to just give in to the bad stuff and actually like finding a way to team up, even if the enemy is, well, us.
Speaking of dark, the review, it points out this one scene. It really shows how good Breccia was at using art to tell the story. It's the aliens, the
Okay.
Beatles, right? And that messed up light-throwing weapon thing they got.
Oh, yeah. The Beatles and their weapon. Big moment in both, but Breccia, man, he turns it up to 11. The 57, it's kind of like a straightforward attack, but the 69, boom, it's all crazy light and shadows. Messed up, confusing. You feel it in your gut, man. The character's fear, it just like jumps off the page.
He doesn't just show it, you feel it. Like listening to a song versus seeing it live, that raw energy just hits you harder.
You got it. Breccia
Yeah.
is not just drawing, he's making you experience it. Adds all this depth and meaning, even with, what the 69 version doesn't quite get right.
Right, right. Because, got to be real, the review says the 69 one, it feels kind of rushed at the end, like they ran out of time.
Yeah, that's what happens when they gotta shut you down. Imagine putting your all into something, only to have it, like, silenced. Makes you think, art that pushes buttons, that's the stuff they come for. But it's also what makes it powerful.
No kidding. Pretty bleak when you put it like that. Okay,
Uh-huh.
so two versions, both Eternaut, products of their time, different anxieties, different art, different ways of telling the story. But they both get at these big, deep questions about us, about surviving, about hope, even when things are super messed up.
And that's why we're still talking about them, right? Like, the world changes, but some things, the stuff we're afraid of, it sticks around.
Makes you think, knowing the first one so well, all hopeful and stuff, does that change how we see the 69 one? Like, does it make it better or maybe less intense? It's like when they remake a movie, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes seeing the first one, it makes you appreciate the new one even more. But sometimes it's like, why'd they even bother?
That's the cool thing about reinterpretations, though, right? It's all up to you. Does a story need to be brand new to hit hard? Or does knowing where it came from, like, add something? This review, it says that, yeah, knowing the 57 Eternaut might make you see the 69 one differently, but the remake, it still stands on its own, even unfinished. It's like finding, I don't know, like a hidden treasure, rough edges and all.
Reminds me of how they used to tell myths and stuff. Every generation, they'd spice it up their own way. Or like Shakespeare, same old stories, endless remixes.
For real. And the Eternaut, same deal. It's timeless, it's about the stuff that scares us deep down, but we get to deal with it in a story, not real life. It's not about which one is better. It's about what each one says about us, about the world.
So whether you're Team Hopeful 57 or Team Cynical 69, they both make you think, right? Like, what matters enough to fight for? What would you do when things go sideways?
And that's the magic of the Eternaut. Throws you right into the fire, makes you face that dark side, but also that potential for good. It reminds you that even when everything's a mess, we can be tough, we can resist, maybe even find hope where you least expect it.
So, next time life's got you down right. Next time you're fighting your own personal alien invasion, think about the Eternaut. What's your story going to be? You going to give in? Or are you going to be like those Argentinians, choosing hope even when it seems impossible? Something to think about. That's all the time we got for today's deep dive, folks. Until next time.